Greetings YouTube, Skill Incarnate bringing you all the latest indie gaming goodness. Welcome back as we look at another indie game. This time I'm headed to the stars with the space station management simulator Orbit Industries from Klabata, the developers behind We the Revolution, a fantastic point and click game I've covered previously. Orbit Industries has a player in charge of managing a massive space station in deep space, constructing new systems, carefully managing your resources, researching cutting-edge technology, and most importantly, ensuring the station remains profitable. What separates Orbit Industries from other games in my opinion is its complexity, with a crafting system far harder than other games I've played, and dozens of individual modules across the station which must be carefully placed to ensure maximum efficiency and constantly maintained in order to ensure the station remains operational. This game is one of the more in-depth management games I've played, requiring more than a few attempts to understand the basics. However, the game loop is incredibly addictive and kept me coming back for another attempt. The player begins with a basic station with only the bare minimum needed for survival, such as life support and basic power. You have only a tiny budget to start with, so you'll need to carefully choose what modules to build. Modules need to be connected to one of the station ports and require space, so players will need to do some planning, placing tubes and ports to maximize the available space as well as allowing enough additional ports for future expansions. The systems you'll need to construct are largely guided by the project board, which is a list of projects that come under several categories. Contracts are tasks assigned by the various organizations and can include exploring wrecked ships, responding to a distress call, or constructing goods such as ships or weapons. Research projects don't provide income but unlock new technology, allowing for construction of new modules or improvement of existing ones. Finally, there are missions, which require large amounts of resources but will progress the campaign when completed. Much of the challenge of the game is learning to balance completing contracts to provide the funding to manage your station and keep your funds in the green, as well as keeping up with the research required to unlock new technology. In order to commence projects or research, you'll first need to construct the infrastructure to support your station. You'll start with solar panels to provide power, environmental controls to provide air, and airlocks to provide access to the station, unlocking additional resources such as water condensers and radioactive containers as you complete more research. Finally, you'll need to construct the facilities for your crew to work in, such as administration modules, boardrooms and security bays for completing projects, and laboratories, radar arrays and computer terminals for conducting research. You'll need to construct quarters for your crew, and in addition to being constructed, every module must be manually connected, with them represented by a circuit board you'll need to wire to the station. You'll spend a majority of your time adding, removing and wiring systems, so it's absolutely vital in the early game to plan out your build. Placing your modules carefully, clustering them together, and carefully wiring them in. Your station will rapidly increase in size, with dozens of connected systems with hundreds of wires, and it's very easy to lose track of where modules are. I found myself having to rewire large portions of my station more than once due to replacing outdated modules or having to rewire systems because of my own poor planning. Thankfully, the game could be paused at any time, giving you the opportunity to rework your build. Orbital Industries is hard. In fact, it's one of the most challenging games I've played this year. And for someone that goes looking for hard games, that's quite a feat. The game has a tutorial that shows off the basic functions such as how to build modules and manage jobs, but it doesn't go into depth and ends rather abruptly. You need to figure out most of the game through trial and error. In fact, it took me a few runs to get further into the campaign without going bankrupt. This is offset by the game's different modes, which includes a creative mode where you can experiment with building a station without having to worry about resources. I did enjoy the challenge of discovering how each of the systems worked, and the process of wiring together my build, optimizing my space, and hunting down errors. But the tutorial could have elaborated, explaining the different resource types and what they're used for, the dependency between modules, and the labels used for events such as errors. The game suffers from UI issues, with the controls making it difficult to navigate, especially when using the external view. Finally, the game has performance issues, which only get worse as your station grows. This was especially noticeable when wiring together systems, as the game struggled to render all of the individual boards and wires on screen. This game is in desperate need of performance optimization. So do I recommend Orbit Industries? This game is one of the most unique titles I've played, with the player constructing, wiring and managing each individual module of a station in detail. The problem is that players are going to struggle with only a vague tutorial requiring trial and error to make progress. The controls are very imprecise, which is a major issue when you're playing a game that requires precision. Finally, the performance issues make the late game experience a little frustrating. Despite all of these issues, I couldn't help but enjoy the challenge of building and managing my own station in a game that may have a few flaws, but is also incredibly original and is a creative take on the management game genre. As an early access game, this title requires a lot of optimization and further testing, and the developer is engaging with the community as well as content creators like myself to improve the experience. Therefore, my recommendation is to pick this up if you're a fan of management games and are willing to invest a little time in a game that's rough around the edges. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. I hope you'll join me next time when we review another indie game. Until then, Skill Incarnate, out.